Alyssa, like I said, super excited. I should have pushed record right when we started. I was telling you, I'm not sure how I came across your profile on LinkedIn, but obviously saw your background in your book, Secrets of Giants. I want to make sure I say the title of it. But you being a part of the world's strongest man, world's strongest women community out there. And I was telling you, my wife's a personal trainer and her focus is on strength training for women, which is super cool. So I was telling her that I was talking with you today and she was super excited about that. And then I was telling you, Evan T-Rex, works out at our gyms.
Yeah.
We've been kind of reintroduced to this space. And then I came across your story and I was like, I got to reach out to Alyssa and see if I can have her on the podcast. So
Love it.
thank you for taking the time today to come on here and talk with us.
Yeah, I'm super excited to chat with you.
Yeah. Well, Alyssa, dive in and just tell an overview of your story because I've looked at a lot of, just your background if I've been researching for this conversation, but how did you get into lifting and find a passion for trying to become as strong as you can? And talk about just some of the struggles maybe along the way that led you to writing your book.
Yeah, it is an extremely non-linear path to how I found the sport of strongman. I guess, like, when I was little, I was, as sporty as the next kid. But then I was about 10 years old and was playing Little League, baseball. And I had this very strong memory of, like, never hitting the ball at any point in time. My team won the championship, but I don't remember contributing at all. And I remember this kind of mortifying moment of, like, winning the MVP game ball for getting hit with the ball and getting an automatic walk onto first base. And I think for some kids, they might have gone, I want to get better at this. Like, this is a sign I should just work harder. And I didn't. I kind of went the other way and was like, this is a sign that I am not good at sports. I'm not good at this sport, and I'm probably not athletic in general. And so it just kind of avoided sports for as long as humanly possible. I cut gym classes when there was baseball because it felt traumatic to me and, all this ridiculous stuff. And then I was in my early 20s working one of my first jobs, and I had to play a corporate softball game. Like, there was just no choice. Like, everyone was doing it. It was also a sport-related job. And I remember I got up to bat, and I swung for the ball, and I hit it, and I don't even actually remember if I got on base, but I know that I hit the ball. And when I had a chance, I kinda went to the side of the field, and I called my mom. I was like, "After all of those, like, childhood swings and misses, I just hit the ball. Like, this is the greatest moment ever." And I remember my mom kind of had this, like, tempered excitement about it, and I couldn't figure out why, and she goes, "That's great." She's like, "But it's not that you always swung the bat and missed the ball." She was like, "You never swung the bat. You would just stand there, like, frozen in fear with the bat in your hands." And it was this real kind of moment for me of, realizing that I'd spent like a decade telling myself this story about who I was and what I could do that was based on something that was completely untrue. And so I took that and I said, okay, what else have I missed out on? What can I do? And decided to quite literally swing at everything. So the first thing I did was I decided I'm going to run a marathon. My dad was a marathon runner. Not I'm going to run a 5K, like I'm going to run a marathon. And obviously I did some, 5Ks and 10Ks in training for it, but did that marathon, crossed the finish line. Actually, to be fair, the first time I was training for one, I got injured. And I guess I could have seen that as a similar setback and just gone, well, I'm not good at running either. But I had this new mindset and I went, no, I'm going to keep doing this. And I ended up running like 6 marathons. And then I went, okay, what's next? Well, I can't swim for shit, but like, let's do a triathlon. And like, threw myself in the pool, taught myself how to swim, and did triathlon. And then went, okay, well, what's the next biggest triathlon I can do? And ended up doing the Ironman. And then you finish the Ironman. And I was like, okay, that was 8 months of doing the same thing over and over again. What's next? And I walked into a CrossFit gym. And I can't even explain, like, I loved it immediately. I was not good at it. I had no mobility because I was a runner. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had a great gym that taught me. And I just remember how different it felt to have like a win every single day, especially when you're new, right? Because the weight goes up very, very quickly. And then I had a friend in my morning class who said, "I think you might like this strongman class that I take on Saturdays." And I was like, "It like carrying like refrigerators on our backs?" And so, "What do you mean?" And she said, "No, no, no, just come." And so I went to that gym, and I remember day 1, we did a metal log over our heads, and then towards the end, we got to pick up an Atlas stone, and it was 90 pounds, and the first time I picked it up, it fell, and I thought, "Oh, man, I don't even wanna look up at people, this is so embarrassing." But I decided I would try it again, and I got it up to my shoulder, and I so clearly remember, and I have a photo of this moment of having that on my shoulder and thinking, "This is life-changing. This is something where, you are moving what seems like an immovable object. Where else in your life do you get to do that?" And I've been doing that for over a decade now, and I'm not this year, I'm not competing, but I don't see myself stopping this sport anytime soon. This feels like the one.
Yeah. I love that, and I love it sounds very similar to my wife as I'm sitting here thinking, 'cause she's the same way. It's like she accomplishes something, and it's like, "What's next? What's next?" Whereas I'm like, "Why don't we just enjoy the CrossFit gym for a while," you know? And, it's funny you mentioned that too, I'm a former athlete, wife is too. We met through kind of a CrossFit gym, and like you, I was addicted from day one. I think it was because I played football and, like, I was needing someone to tell me what to do, and then you're in there with other people, and you're all struggling together, you're all winning together, like, the community aspect of it was what I really enjoyed, but also just, like, it scratched the competitive itch a little bit too, because you wanna, selfishly be better than someone next to you while also cheering them on. It's a very unique, environment there, but super cool that you found something that you're gonna stick with for a while, and you've been working towards getting better at and better at. But I know along the way you've had your challenges, and I know you write about that in your book. What were or what are some of those challenges that you've had to overcome and are still working to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, a big one for me was sort of understanding what I guess my feelings towards failure were, especially because that was what had stopped me for that entire decade from doing anything. And strength sports in particular are an exercise in failure. You can't do it well if you're not willing to fail. In very large part because you don't know, oftentimes you're asked to find your 1 rep maximum, right? The heaviest weight you can move for something. Which you can't figure that out until you fail at it, right? So let's say you're like, "Okay, I think it's 200 pounds on my deadlift." And you go and you have to try to lift 200 pounds, right? And then you go, "Oh, okay, nope, I'm not there yet. I failed at that one." But you don't walk out of the gym, right? You go, "All right, let's try, I don't know, 190." And you go back and then you have this thing to work towards, but you have to be willing to screw it up at first. And as I was kind of figuring that out with my book, one of the hardest things for me was overhead pressing. I think I got in my head about it. And, I started to work with a performance psychologist, in part because I wanted to learn about myself for the book, but in part because I was training for a national competition and I really wanted to do well in it. And she said, "For you, it's not this fear of failure itself, right?" She was like, "For you, it's that you don't wanna do all the things you know you have to do to give it your best shot, because if you do and you fail, then you have to face the fact that you're not ready for that thing yet, right? Like, you're not that's not something you can do yet, and you don't wanna face that. You would rather create these kind of excuses by just going, "Oh, the weight felt heavy," or "I felt scared," where you kinda come up with these other things when nope, it's what you have to do is, elbows up high and all these other things. And so that was really, really useful for me, and one of the things that we worked on together was writing down very clear, inarguable cues for any of those lifts that were scary. So that when I stepped out there, I couldn't let my brain take over and go, "That weight's scary. Oh, this feels too heavy." It's just the only thing you're allowed to think about right now is, I don't know, like short dip, elbows up for this press. That's it. And that's something I still use outside of the gym too. I'm a freelance journalist is one of the things that I do, one of my main jobs. And you pitch things and they're rejected constantly, right? And so you got to go, "That's not about me. That's not personal. That's this thing was wrong with it or this thing was wrong with it. And I can fix that next time." And that really shifts how I see failure on a day to day basis.
Yeah. There's 2 things I've caught on to what throughout what you've been talking about. One is the overcoming fear and just the mental hurdle of that, and the other is writing things down and journaling. To the first part, isn't it so amazing that when you do accomplish something hard or you do overcome something hard, just like the snowball of momentum, and you said it perfectly earlier. You're like, I just started doing everything because, like, if I
Yeah.
can overcome this thing that I've been so afraid of for so long, like, what else can I do? But it's amazing. You just kind of like, if you can flip that switch and all of a sudden you just don't care anymore if you fail or struggle at something, you're like, I'll figure it out. Like, I'll do it. And I know I can do it. But it just seems like, and I'm really fascinated with people who are high achievers or ultra successful. They just seem to have that, like, I don't care if I lose or fail attitude. It just doesn't matter to them at all. They're not embarrassed by it. They don't care. Like, they know they're going to figure it out. And I read about that, and I hopefully I sharpen my brain to take that approach too, because it's such a powerful thing and exciting thing when you do it. The other is the journaling part. And I saw where you did all, I mean, New York Times, GQ, like, you write for all kinds of formats and all kinds of things, which is really awesome. But I've had a few guests on recently. One's a former NFL All-Pro athlete, and, like, our entire conversation was about him journaling and just the importance of, like, he was an All-Pro fullback, but he was also cut 12 times in his career.
Wow.
So, he would write things down and figure out, like, "Okay, what did I feel in this moment? Okay, if I'm not doing well during that time, what do I need to do to change that?" But he just put a book out there of a whole journaling season, but he was like, I can't stress enough the importance of, like, writing things down so you can go back and see what that was like during that time, or it just creates moments and memories and just it propels you in a way that it's hard to really explain. But, you're not it's just fascinating. I keep hearing the importance of writing things down over and over again, and there's something to that.
I agree. Absolutely. I think, that's why we always tell lifters to to write about their lifts, right? Because it gives you a chance to see how far you've come. And that's really important in just your general motivation and also kind of, believing in what you can do next.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Alyssa, when people read your book and I know there's a few different things to it. It's partly your journey, there's research involved. What are some tricks that and I know you said writing things down was one of them, that you could kind of create a kind of a circuit, change of direction where it's like, you can't think of this way, you got to shift that. But what are some tricks? What are some other tricks, I guess, or methods, strategies that you talk about in the book?
Yeah. I mean, I think a really big one, and I don't know that I talk about it a tremendous amount, but I do think it's really important and especially in the world of, I was going to say sports, but really it's anything, is prioritizing discipline over motivation. So I think motivation is like kind of useless. Like maybe it gets you to the gym the first time, right? But it's not going to get you out of bed every day. So for me, I don't want to wake up at 5:30 and train, but if like that day is a training day and my alarm goes off at 5:30, I've just made it habitual that I just get up. Unless I've had a really garbage night of sleep and I don't think I'm gonna do well or I'm gonna hurt myself or whatever it is, I'm up. I'm up and I'm doing it and I just walk down and I have a gym in my garage, so it's easy for me to say that, but I get up and I go and I do the thing and then the thing is done and then I move on with the rest of my day. And I think that is such a crucial thing to think about. Someone who I've been talking to a lot recently because we've been working on a book together, which they'll be hopefully, like, we're announcing that sorta soon. But, I've been working with Mitchell Hooper on his book, and he talks a lot about and he just won World's Strongest Man for any of
Yeah.
your listeners who don't know
I
that.
saw one of your articles where
Yeah,
you're following him, yeah.
um, and he talks about even at his level, he's like, "I don't wanna get up and go to the gym." That's not like, I would be happier if I was just, like, laying in bed eating ice cream and watching random TV shows, but it's just something you do. It's this thing that you make for yourself as a non-negotiable, and I often tell people when I write articles about this, put it in your calendar because then it's an appointment with yourself, and you're not gonna miss that appointment in
Yep,
theory.
yep. I love talking about discipline. Just discipline is like wanting something more than what you feel like in that moment, and
Yeah.
just making yourself go do it. And again, I keep talking about my wife, but it's so cool. We bounce these things off each other. And I'm gonna ask you a question because this is something we've discussed lately as we I feel like we're pretty driven individuals, pretty disciplined for the most part. And watching, I don't know if it's like the day and time or just like social media and stuff, but it seems like there's like less of a lack, like there's a lack of, I don't want to say motivation, but like discipline to want to accomplish things. It just seems like some people are just maybe existing instead of living, and there's not a lot of, and you try to surround yourself with people who are like-minded and they're driven and stuff, but there just seems to be people out there too that I'm like, what is their mission? Like, what are they wanting to do? And you just want to like talk to them and be like, hey,
Yeah.
you have a gift in there, like, go figure it out. Have you ever looked into that too? And I know maybe not because of like you're such a driven individual. I think it drives other people crazy when you see people like that. And I know this is a very like convoluted question, but do you see that from your side too of like just people having a harder time overcoming hurdles than they used to or
Yeah, I mean, listen, almost everything is easier and more automated for us now, right? So there's very few things, and it goes down to even the smallest of things, like, oh, I can't remember the name of that song. I can go online, and I can chat GPT. Like, there's just we don't have the same hurdles we had before. So I do think some of that is not everyone's fault. It's just we now have systems in place to make that easier. And as humans, we are always going to go for the thing that's easier, right? I One of the things that actually drives me crazy is I really am not a big fan of the concept of manifesting or secreting stuff or whatever, because I think it takes the credit away from you as a person, right? If you say, I manifested this job that I got, right? Like, no, you didn't. You applied for that job. In theory, you wrote a good looking resume and cover letter, and then you got interviewed for that job, and in theory, you did a really good job at that interview, and then you got that job. So the fact
did
that
the
you wrote
work.
it down in a journal somewhere and said you wanted it isn't the reason you got it. Right?
Exactly.
The universe didn't just have somebody call you and go, "Hey, here's a job for you." You had to do all the work to get there. So I'm not, against writing down your goals, but that's a totally different thing. And so that to me feels like a bit of a kind of current social media thing of I'll just put this thing out in the universe and it'll happen.
Yeah.
Because again, if it does happen, you're not giving yourself the credit for it. And if it doesn't happen, you have this very easy excuse. So I wrote it down and it just, I don't know, it didn't work. And it means you don't feel like you have to work for it.
Yeah.
Right? And I always say, and to relate that back to weightlifting, it's sort of like the weight on that barbell isn't just going to fly up in the air because I want it to. It's going to fly up in the air because I trained for it. I warmed up properly. I remembered my cues. I did all the things that I was supposed to do. And then, yes, I was focused enough and dialed in enough to also execute on that.
Yep.
But all those things have to work together.
Yep. And you described that perfectly. That's exactly what I was trying to portray in my words was the automation part of things. And you almost have to, like as humans now, we almost have to force ourselves to do hard things just to do it. Like, ordering groceries. Like, this week let's go to the store and, and pick out our food or,
Yeah.
instead of having someone mow the yard, do it yourself. Like there's just all these things that can make things so ordering meals that are pre-cooked. Like there's so
Yeah.
many things that make life easy. And then it kind of gets ingrained of, oh, if this is hard, how can I find an easier way? When really you should maybe flip that and say like, "Hey, I'm gonna do these things and make it hard on myself so that I continue to sharpen myself and grow." And it's the same correlation, like you said, with strength training or any sort of athletic ability. Like you gotta do hard things against resistance so that you can get better and better and better. And I think that's just I don't know, maybe it's just personal. Like I see that in people nowadays where everyone's looking for just the easy path, myself included. And I gotta catch myself and say, like, no, I need to, like, make this harder on myself.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I'm sure I don't know how you can, mass adopt trying to do hard things, but I like that you're out there sharing your story because
Yeah.
it encourages that.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like when you purposely do this is such a strange way to relate it back to, but I remember this so strongly from like middle school and high school. Was I remember finding out that the practice tests for like the SATs were going to be significantly harder than the SATs because it's supposed to feel easier the day of because you did the hard thing in advance. That applies to everything else in your life. The more you choose to do really tough shit on purpose, the easier everything else is gonna feel when you have to go do that, right? You give yourself the intentional difficulties so that all the stuff that you can't control feels a little bit easier to manage. And on the flip side of that, if you choose to only do the easy way out of everything, every tough thing that comes your way is going to feel so much harder, right? So I can just again relate it back to strength training. If I know that I can put a 150-pound stone on my shoulder, the fact that like carrying my 50-pound kid from the playground 2 blocks because she's screaming and I got to get her home, that would feel so daunting otherwise. But now I'm like, "Well, okay, I can do that. I can get that's fine. That is manageable, you know?"
Yeah. No, I love that. And I even look at like my work of like balancing work, books for guys. It's been really cool because I sometimes people are like, dude, you're doing so much. And I'm like, yeah, like 6 months ago, a lot of this felt super overwhelming. But now, like my days, I'm like, oh yeah, no big deal. Edit this, send this, call this person, da da da. And it like things just get easier the more you put yourself in those situations to have to just grind and grow, and it's just a really I can't, like, phrase it enough how good it feels, and I hope this conversation, inspires people to take that same approach 'cause it just there's nothing better, and I'm sure even doing some coaching as well, like, seeing people overcome things, there's just not a better feeling to experience that.
Yeah.
But Alyssa, just a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
As people read your book, and I'm super excited that you said you're working on another one. Can't wait to see what that is.
Well, I'm ghostwriting it.
Yeah, but
So,
still, part of another book. Can't wait to see what that is and to share and experience that. But for people who read your book, Secrets of Giants, if they take nothing else away from it but one nugget, what do you hope they take away from it?
I hope, and I know we've touched on this, but I hope people find opportunities to face and to chase failure. I didn't do that for such a long time, and I think that, you know, that impacted my childhood, my adolescence. And now, as a mom of 2 kids, I really try to push them to do those things that they're uncomfortable doing so that they have those opportunities to screw it up and then go, okay, well, the world didn't end, and let me figure out how to fix this. Let me figure out how to get better at this. My older daughter really didn't like soccer, which fair. I didn't like soccer as a kid. But to be fair, nobody said, well, let's have you keep doing it for a bit and just practice it. And so we kind of broke down what she didn't like, and one of the big things was she didn't like the competing part of it. She didn't wanna be doing an actual game. And I was like, "Okay, well, in case you ever want to, let's do a clinic. Do something where you learn the fundamentals of the sport and you get better at the basics of it. So if you do decide you wanna actually do it, or you are in a situation in, like, gym class where you have to do it, you're not going, 'Oh my god, I can't do this.' You walk in there going, 'I have the tools to do this because I took the opportunity to find them. I took the opportunity to learn this thing.'" And I think that's really, really important. That applies to lifting, that applies to anything else, right? I mean, we talk about you can't expect to be able to put your 30-pound luggage in the overhead bin if you never put 30 pounds over your head in any other setting. As a freelance journalist, I pitched the New York Times 10 times before I got my first article with them. Through that process, I learned what went into a better pitch. And I got better at those and I got better at those. And eventually I landed something. So you gotta you have to be okay with screwing something up so that you learn how to get better at it next time.
Yeah, love that. Love that. And actually, I've got two more questions. I had one more, but one of them just came to mind, and I would love to know just your opinion on or your message behind why do you think being strong is important? Because I've thought about this too, and I've thought about it in a funny way. And I think it helps me with discipline to be in the gym more, and I take it as like it's my responsibility to be strong. And I think, and this is kind of a crazy scenario, but I'm like, if my family's ever in danger, I better be the one able to kick ass and protect them. And I'm saying people too. I'm like, you lazy people are gonna appreciate us fit people one day when you're in trouble, and you're gonna rely on us to take care of you. But and I know it goes deeper than that, but what is your message behind why it's important to be a strong human physically?
Yeah. I mean, aside from all of the sciencey stuff we know, like it gives you stronger bones, which as a woman is just wildly, incredibly important as we get older. It allows you to live independently for longer because strength training helps you build better balance, better stability. It makes sure that, you are less likely to fall. And then because you've built those strong bones, if you do fall, you're less likely to break a hip and suddenly need someone to take care of you. And I also think it just, and this is for everybody, I think it changes the way you see the world. I walk down the street so differently as a person who is strong. And I remember that from that first moment in that strongman gym. I remember walking out of there and going, I think I could lift that giant concrete barrier if I wanted to, and I worked hard enough for it. And that is such a different way to go through life than thinking, oh, I can't do this task that might come in front of me. If somebody needs to move something in their house, I'm the person they call. They
Yeah.
don't call my husband, they call me. I love that. I think that is the coolest thing in the whole world. And I don't ever want to feel like I can't do that. I can move my stuff into a moving truck, which I did once. I remember very clearly moving out of my New York City apartment, and we had these big boxes of books, and my husband had brought down a box of them, and it was sitting at the base of the truck, and we didn't have one of those little ramps that went up, and the truck bed was at about this height, and the box was really heavy, and I stood there, and I was like, "Oh, what do I do?" And then I went, "Oh, Atlas stone," and I put my hands underneath it, and I hugged it into my chest, and I went like this, and I pushed it onto the truck bed. You feel so different and you see the world so differently when you know that you're the person that rescues you. You're the person that does the thing. You're the person that can handle the hard tasks or the heavy weight in front of you. That is a really amazing way to go through life. And I hope that's something people take away from any conversation that I have with them about this.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Alyssa, last question for you, and I ask everyone this question just from a book standpoint. I'm always curious to know, what is a book or two that has meant a lot to you personally or professionally, and what's a book that you like to recommend to others?
This is so easy for me. I read when I started ghostwriting, I read Open, which is Agassi's memoir. I started to read it because it was ghostwritten and I wanted to understand what is it like to embody someone else's voice. But it is you don't have to know anything about tennis or like anything about tennis. I don't really know much about tennis to appreciate the way this story was done, how raw he was, how vulnerable. You learn so much about him as a person, but you learn a lot about what it means to tell a good story and what it means to, I guess, again, be somebody who is open to, kind of screwing up and then coming out of it, being better for it. I feel like I tell people to read that book constantly. And yeah, that is one of my favorites.
Love that. I think I've got that one on the website, actually. I think it's one of the first ones I put on there, and I actually haven't read it yet. I need to, because I've heard great things about it, and you're, like, the 3rd person to recommend it, so which means I probably need to start that one
You
next.
should read it, and you should read the book his ghostwriter had written his own memoir first, and it's called The Tender Bar. That is Agassi read that book and then said, "I want this guy to write my book." So both of those I think are really amazing. Yeah.
Those to my list. I'm trying to knock those out next because, yeah, it sounds like something I'd be extremely interested in reading, so but Alyssa, no, this has been fantastic. Again, I was so excited to talk with you, and it even exceeded expectations because I could talk about these topics all day
Me
long.
too.
Discipline, sports, athletics, like that's just the world that I love and you love. It's so much fun to communicate about just the different aspects and thoughts and mental side and physical. There's so much to it that you can find interesting and learn from. But no, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And now that we've met, I know you've got so many more things you're going to accomplish, whether that's competing or storytelling or whatever you decide to do. And so it'll be really exciting to follow your work and see what all you continue to do.
Thank you. Thank you for reaching out to me, and this was a great conversation. Thank you for all the thoughtful questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you.